Alright, so the purpose of today's video is going to be to explore a part of my collection that I've never really showcased in great detail before, and that would be my modest collection of video game soundtracks. So original sound versions on CD and a few of them on cassette tape. So ironically enough, this is actually some of the first pieces of merchandise that I ever started collecting back in probably 2007 or 2008. I've always really loved video game music, so I started buying them up on CD so I could listen to them in my car and stuff like that. And eventually, I came upon pieces that were a lot more valuable, a lot harder to come by. So this is a modest collection of soundtracks, but I'll go through them one at a time, and we'll start with cassette tape. So this is one of the very first soundtracks that I ever purchased. This is the DK Jams cassette tape soundtrack. So this is the soundtrack to Donkey Kong Country. I am not too sure, but I believe that this cassette and the CD were available through Nintendo Power Magazine. So I purchased this. I remember back probably 2007 because I remember bringing it camping with me and playing this on an old boombox with a tape deck in the middle of the forest, which is quite the experience. So this is DK Jams on cassette tape. There's also a CD that exists. Now, one of the soundtracks that I'd say is one of the more rare soundtracks that I own, and I'm not making a pun there because the developer is rare. This is the Donkey Kong Country 2 soundtrack, so I'm pretty sure that this one as well would have been offered through Nintendo Power, much like the Donkey Kong Country 1 DK Jam soundtrack. This one I don't remember where I got it. It wasn't on eBay or from anybody in our gaming community. It was on some website, on a forum. Somebody sold it to me, I think for like $5, and I trusted him, and I sent him money through PayPal, and he actually mailed it to me. And it's from what I understand, the Donkey Kong Country 2 soundtrack is one of the hardest ones to come by. Now I also have this one here to complete the trilogy. This is Donkey Kong Country 3 soundtrack. It's actually a slipcase, so it's not a full digipack or jewel case. It's just a slipcase, and the CD is inside. Some of my favorite music of all time is in that trilogy, so it's really nice to be able to own these. Alright, moving along. So this here is the Mother 2 soundtrack on CD. Now this isn't the complete soundtrack because there's so much music in this game. This is fantastic. This is a selection of songs that you'd hear more often, so like the main town themes and the main theme itself and stuff like that. I got this a long time ago. Keep in mind, a lot of these soundtracks I acquired by 2009, so I've had these for a very long time in my collection. Here's another one that's similar to the Donkey Kong Country 3 soundtrack. This is Killer Cuts from Killer Instinct. This is also a slipcase. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think that this soundtrack was available when you pre-ordered Killer Instinct, but you shouldn't quote me on that. So this one has, the majority of the themes from the game. It's a really cool soundtrack. Here is an Earthworm Jim anthology by Tommy Tallarico. So this is a collection of a bunch of Earthworm Jim songs from the video games. I got this when I went to see Play, the video game orchestra that I'm pretty sure was put together by Tommy Tallarico. I think he's the one responsible for putting that whole show together, and he also composed the music to this game. So I think I bought this CD after the show at a merch booth for like $10 or something like that, which I think is a steal. Now here's one of the soundtracks that I would say is one of my rarest soundtracks, and once again, no pun intended, but this is the Conker's Bad Fur Day soundtrack. This is sealed. I don't know if you can see by the video, but it's sealed. It's never been opened. This was, from what I understand, an employee-only item. It wasn't to be sold, so I'm assuming that they gave these out to employees who worked for Rare at the time. From what I understand, this one is quite valuable and quite rare. Now, possibly one of my favorites video game soundtracks of all time, and one of the most valuable soundtracks I own, and one of the most valuable pieces of merchandise that I own. So it's like a triple whammy there. This is the Super Mario RPG original sound version on CD. So this one is I still have this little protective sleeve on it. One of my favorite games of all time, possibly my favorite soundtrack of all time, and I'll take it out of its sleeve now, which is why I'm wearing gloves so I don't get any finger grease or whatever on it. This is a double CD, so it's got two CDs. So in here you've got some liner notes in terms of like, who wrote the music, and there's the first CD. And then you could access the second CD inside. So it opens up, and there's the second CD right there. I don't know if the camera's focusing. There it is. So great soundtrack. I've seen these fetch up to 500 US on eBay, and I'm not joking. This one seems to be worth a lot of money. So it's going to stay tucked away from light, away from dust. So this is the Donkey Kong Country 64 soundtrack. Once again, I'm pretty sure these were available through Nintendo Power. So this is the back of the soundtrack. And the CD itself. The inside. I can see that there. Alright, so that's the Donkey Kong 64. And along a similar vein, this is the Banjo-Kazooie soundtrack. So that's what that CD looks like in the back. Great game, great music. And here's the inside. Once again, I'm pretty sure this one was also available through Nintendo Power. If you wanted to buy it, maybe you sent a check in the mail and they mailed you this soundtrack. Now this here is the original soundtrack from Do Prism. Do Prism is also known as Threads of Fate in North America. It was one of the first PlayStation games I ever played, and I really liked the music, so I tried to hunt down the soundtrack. It took me a few years, but I finally was able to get the original Japanese version. And this is also a double CD, much like the Super Mario RPG soundtrack, except that the case here opens this way rather than unfold. So this one doesn't unfold. It has one CD kind of back to back inside the case with some looks like some concept artwork inside. Majora's Mask, original soundtrack. So I think for the purpose of time, I'm not going to open up and really show in detail every single soundtrack. I'll just go through them fairly quickly, so this video doesn't drag on forever. This is the Diddy Kong Racing soundtrack, and try to pronounce that. It's Höher, Schneller, Weiter. It's in German. So this is the German version of the soundtrack of Diddy Kong Racing, and it's funny because all the track titles are all in German in the back. Fantastic game, great music, great soundtrack. Now these next three I think they were promotional items. So when you pre-ordered these games, it came with this CD here, which is they refer to it as a music selection. So it only has a handful of songs from Chrono Cross, but you probably can't notice from the video, but the writing itself, you could, it kind of sticks out, kind of like those Goosebumps books, when the title would kind of stick out and you can feel it. So this is Chrono Cross. Similarly, there's Legend of Mana. So this is the Legend of Mana one, and once again, Threads of Fate. But this time they actually wrote Threads of Fate. So this is a North American promo. When you pre-order these games, you got this as a pre-order gift. This here is one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, Silent Hill 2. The soundtrack that was responsible for my first teaching myself how to play piano many, many years ago. So this is a really, really great soundtrack. This is Conker Live and Reloaded. My memory serves correctly, I think they re-released Conker's Bad Fur Day for the Xbox and this CD kind of, I guess, came out around that time. This is a 2 CD set full of music composed by the Bean, Robin Beanland. He's a great composer. Final Fantasy Prey. I have to admit, I have never listened to this one. I haven't opened it. I'm not too sure what's on it. I'm not even sure if it's legit, if it's an official soundtrack. Like I said, I really don't remember how I came by this one. Possibly the weirdest soundtrack of all time is the Nintendo White Knuckle score and soundtrack, which is basically just a bunch of songs that don't really have anything to do with Mario, that are put on a CD, and then they sold it, except for the first one, Ignorance is Bliss, by a band called Jellyfish, which is a super weird song. You could YouTube it and listen to it, but yeah, this is, I don't know, I guess they're trying to, sell the brand as much as they could. This is from, I don't know if it has a year on it. Yeah, 1991, so probably coincided with the release of Super Mario World. I know I say this a lot, but another one of my all-time favorite video game soundtracks, and also one of my favorite video games. This is the Legend of Zelda soundtrack, which I also think was available through Nintendo Power when they were, when that was available through the magazine service. So, great CD, great soundtrack. This here says Nintendo Power on it, so absolutely was available through Nintendo Power. This is called Play It Loud. It's volume 1. I don't think I've ever seen other volumes, but it's just a collection of songs from various games. So you've got a few Yoshi's Island tracks, F-Zero, and so on and so forth. It's a cool soundtrack. It gives you a good medley of songs from some fantastic games. This is a Mario Kart 64 soundtrack. Not to be confused with the other one called Racetracks, I believe it is, which is a more complete soundtrack. This one here has all the essential songs from the game, and the game had great music. This is particularly dangerous to listen to while you're driving, because it just makes you want to drive really quickly. This one is the Resident Evil 2 soundtrack, also known as Biohazard 2. I'm unsure if this one's official, because when I see at the bottom here SM Records, it's possible that it's a counterfeit. The thing about Japanese video game soundtracks is that you'll see a whole bunch of them that look virtually identical with different record labels slapped on them. But usually there's only one legitimate record label that had the rights to reproduce that music, and some of them, they just kind of copy one another and just release it themselves, but without the proper rights. So it's possible this is a counterfeit. And we're going to get into counterfeits a little bit more now. But first, here's the Chrono Trigger complete soundtrack. It's one of my favorite soundtracks that I own. It's a large box with 3 CDs in it, so I'm just going to open it here. This is what it looks like. It's a large plastic case, plastic jewel case, as you can see here. And when you open it inside, there's 3 CDs. So what you can see here on the left is disc 1, and then on the other side there's 2 more discs. So this is the complete soundtrack. Now, this one particularly has been counterfeited a lot, as you can see with this one. So, Chrono Cross, same deal as the Chrono Trigger one. It's I'm going to open it here. It's a big jewel case. Looks nice, looks legit. If you Google Chrono Cross soundtrack, you'll see this come up. However, one thing that's a dead giveaway that it's a counterfeit is this little label on the side here, if I could find it. Yes, right here. So here where it says Ever Anime at the top, I don't know if you can see that, right there. That's how you know it's a counterfeit. That's not the actual company that had the rights to release this soundtrack. So what they do, I guess there's a lot with the Japanese video game soundtracks. A lot of times what happens, and while I talk here, I'm going to open this up, is that so maybe one record label or one company has the rights to reproduce that soundtrack on CD form and sell it physically. So other companies kind of come in and they create a product that looks virtually identical to the official one. In this case, if you look at the official one of this, it's almost indistinguishable except for the record company that slaps their brand on the soundtrack. So one company has the one company has the rights to produce it, to reproduce it in physical form and sell it. The others don't. So that's why this one here is a counterfeit. It's a great soundtrack. So I could feel pretty good about bringing it in the car or listening to it, not taking great care of it. So that's pretty much it for my soundtracks. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know. If you've got any soundtracks of your own that you'd like to share, I'd be very interested in taking a look at them. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you've got any suggestions of other videos I could do, or any other piece of my collection that you'd be interested in learning more about, feel free. Alright, have a great day.